Hola, amigos, amigas, ¿qué tal? This is Tony speaking to you from Charlemos. In case you are not a Charlemos member at the moment, I would welcome you to join our community. And if you are a Charlemos member, then you will understand the concepts of being nervous or anxious or downright terrified before having a conversation in a foreign language, be it Spanish, French, whatever it is that you're learning. And so what I want to talk about today is how we might alter our thinking about the challenge of being in a conversation in a foreign language so that we are less nervous, less anxious about it, and as a result are more able to enjoy the experience of that conversation and be able to enjoy the learning and all the work that we've put into learning the language. I have a background in cognitive psychology, and I also ran a presentation training business here in New Zealand for 20 odd years, in which I worked a lot with people that had almost debilitating fear of public speaking. And I myself once froze in front of a group when I was meant to stand up and introduce someone and start their presentation. I wasn't even the presenter. I was just the introducer, and I froze. So I have some experience in this challenge of the fear that takes over us at moments when we want to perform. And that fear will rise before the performance, as we think about, as we imagine or visualize the very thing that we want to do. And that fear before the event can stop us from going and doing that thing. In the case of Charlemos, it can stop you from coming along to one of our sessions on Zoom and having a conversation or 3 conversations with a person. And so let's have a look at what's going on. And the main thing, I mean, there are many things I can talk about, and I'll probably make some more videos. The main thing I want to talk about in this video is this. If you reframe the bad thing that you think is going to happen, that will make a big difference to whether you feel fearful or not. So we think there are some bad things that might happen during the conversation, and it's because we call it a bad thing that we get nervous. But if you can reframe that, if you can call that bad thing not a bad thing, but something else, then it will no longer have the power to trigger your nervous system to fire off adrenaline and cortisol and create all the sensations, which are just bodily sensations, which we label as fear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at 3 of the main triggers, those things that we call bad things, and look at how could you reframe those things, and see if that makes a difference to your sensations, the sensations that are created when you think about coming along to a charla or having a conversation with a speaker in the language that you're learning. Okay, so look, there are 3 main things I've experienced for myself in terms of what one might get fearful about. One is making a mistake. The second thing is a mind blank. And the third one is not knowing a word, something that you want to say. And that might also be what the other person says to you, for that matter. So I want to just go through those one by one. Okay, so let's talk about making a mistake. Let's imagine that you're in a conversation and the person that you're with says, where are you at the moment? And you say, oh, soy en Estados Unidos. And they nod, and then you continue, and they're like, oh no, I said soy, and I should have said estoy en Estados Unidos. Oh. Okay, now, we've all been there. That whole estoy en soy de, it's tricky. It's tricky. But one of the things, well, there are 2 things that can occur. One is that you may not even notice that you made that mistake. All right. Now, if you don't notice that you've made that mistake, what feelings of shame or embarrassment or whatever occurs if you don't notice that you make the mistake? None. None happen. So what this tells us is it's not the mistake that causes any sort of feeling of shame or guilt or embarrassment. No, the thing itself doesn't cause that. It's our thinking about it. We have to notice it and then declare it as a bad thing, and then we'll feel bad. So a mistake doesn't cause you to have bad feelings. It's your evaluation of the mistake. So can you evaluate the mistake differently? And there are lots of ways that you can evaluate mistakes, because that's what I'm going to call it. It's like take one, take two. It's a mistake. It didn't quite work out the way you wanted to, just like in the movies where it doesn't work out and so they do it again. In your case, in my case, in any one of us, what we can do is say, okay, I got that wrong. That's a learning for me. That's something that I can make a note of, and after this conversation, I can spend more time practicing saying that statement, estoy en Estados Unidos, soy de Estados Unidos, figure it out and practice it. What that mistake is a signal for you that you're not quite automatic using that phrase. And gosh, why would we be? In English, we just say, I am. All right, so the reframing then is to see a mistake like that as a message that there's something that you haven't quite learned, and that you can spend some more time on. Now, there's going to be a similar theme with the other things that can happen to us. That's mistakes. The next one is mind blanks. I was talking with Lisa in one of our conversations the other day, and I just could not for the life of me remember the word for cash. And when I lived in Spain, I used the word every day, probably. And then she told me, and efectivo, cash. And then I was continuing talking about it, and I came back to saying, and I'd forgotten the word again. I had a complete mind blank again, and I couldn't remember the word. Now, that again is a message that I'm unfamiliar with the word. That's the first reason I had the mind blank with it. I hadn't used the word for several years. I had no need to use the word. So that was just a reminder that I might want to use some method of refreshing, such as reading more, flashcards, whatever it is. Or I just make a note of that word. Though the thing is, since that moment, I haven't forgotten the word. Right? So the actual kind of pain of not remembering it has made it easy to remember. We remember things better when there's some sort of emotional attachment to them. So what you might do is reframe a mind blank as an opportunity to go, well, that kind of felt a bit tricky, felt a bit difficult, but actually that feeling will help you to remember better. So that's another reframe of just not having a word. And the other thing that can happen is that you just don't know the word at all. You don't know the word that the other person's saying, or in our case, the challenge can be, I just don't know how to say whatever that word is. Well, in Charlemos, we have a guideline. If you cannot say the word, if you've tried to remember it and you had a mind blank, or if you just don't know the word at all, say it in English. And then the conversation can continue. Now, the reframe of I don't know the word, well, there's not really a reframe. It's just you don't know the word. Why would you beat yourself up for not knowing something? You just, you're on a journey here. And it's not that you should know it or have to know it or, have learned it. No, it just hasn't come into your vocabulary. But what you can reframe this as is, wow, that's great. I've now discovered a word that I wanted to use in a conversation, but I didn't know it. And now I know that I don't know it, and I can find out what it is, and I can practice using it, put it into my learning list, my flashcards, whatever works for you. So not knowing a word is an opportunity to discover. You've discovered a word that you don't know. So look, those three things: making a mistake, having a mind blank, not knowing the word. You can see all of those things as opportunities to learn. Now, you'll be familiar with the concept of the comfort zone, where you're in control, where everything goes well. You're experienced, you can manage things, and you feel comfortable, right? Well, look, when we're in our foreign language, we're not in that comfort zone anymore. We're outside of it, right? We're in the learning zone. We're in a space where we don't know everything that's going on. We don't remember. We're in the process of learning. If you stay in your comfort zone, you are not learning. So see that discomfort, that thing that the body does that tells us that something is going on. See that as a signal that you are actually doing something that's making you grow. And reinterpret the feeling as well as, hey, I'm doing something important here, something of value, something that's making me grow. And it feels uncomfortable, yes. But look, I guarantee you've had more uncomfortable feelings in your life and you've been able to handle them. But see it in a positive light. Go, that my heart beating and my shakiness and all that sort of thing that's going on, that is helping me to go forward in the improvement of my language. You possibly know the story of Thomas Edison being challenged by a reporter. He was trying to create the light bulb. He had an idea that some sort of filament inside a vacuum of glass heated up, could produce light, and he was right because the filament got hot. But always the filament burned out. He couldn't find the right material, and he tried and tried and tried. And the story goes that a reporter said to him, "Mr. Edison, you've tried 1,000 materials for your filament. You've failed 1,000 times. How do you feel about that?" And Thomas Edison apparently said, "Look, I haven't failed 1,000 times. I've discovered 1,000 things that don't work." And that's what we could do with this journey that we're on, is reframe failure to discovery. Discovering where we have needs, where we need to do more work, and where there are opportunities for us to add to our vocabulary. And what I trust will happen for you is what you can do is do a reframing visualization. When you find, or if you find yourself thinking about coming along to a session, speaking to a native speaker of the language you're learning, and if you find yourself feeling that tension, that nervousness, that fear, those feelings that well up in ourselves, use that as an opportunity to imagine the things that might go wrong, the opportunities, and tell yourself, as you visualize those things, tell yourself, hey, that will be useful. That will be a guide to me. I can use that information. It will feel a bit uncomfortable, but it will be of value to me. And visualize those things happening, and in your mind, start to get into the habit of telling yourself, hey, that wasn't a disaster. That was a piece of learning, because I put myself in the learning zone. And when you do put yourself into the learning zone, clearly you will grow, because your comfort zone gets larger as your vocabulary and your fluency and your confidence with the language gets larger as well. And there's always spaces to go out to. So look, as language learners, we are on a journey outside of comfort, and it goes on and on and on. And what's useful for us is to have strategies that enable us to reframe those things that we've called in the past bad things. No, they're not bad things. They're opportunities to learn. They're reminders of what we need to work on, and they're what help us become better at what we want to do on this journey of learning and speaking a new language.